Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk Business, brought to you by RealtyNXT. This is Mridanjali Rawal. On today's episode, we will talk about the latest trends in warehousing and logistics sectors. Today, our guest is Mr. Shridhar N, CEO GreenBase Infrastructure, which is a Hiranandani Group subsidiary. Hello, Mr. Narayan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. So far, so good, given the pandemic days. Actually, I'm traveling now today. I'm in Chennai. And I think things have started looking up across all cities. And people are getting out of that mind psychosis of the corona fear. And I think I see roads full. So
That-
people are back to work. And that's a good sign.
That's a very good sign. So we have seen that there are many developers entering the warehousing sector. So
Yeah,
last year, Hiranandani developers had announced an investment of 2,000 crores in warehousing business. So
correct.
please tell us about the progress on the same.
Okay. See, we had announced 3,000 crores. So what we did in the last 2.5, 3 years is essentially we had set up the whole GreenBase venture in joint venture with Blankstone, and then we got the entire vertical funded. And as far as we are concerned, I think the sector is looking at very well, and it's a very sticky asset as compared to as good as a grade A commercial office asset. And where we have invested close to 1,000 odd crores. I just finished discussing with my clients, and so what has happened is naturally progressed over from a township to being an infrastructure developer to becoming a natural fit for industrial logistics and warehousing, because bulk of it is all infrastructure that you build
Absolutely.
across, which is because they typically have the roads, the power, the light, the warehousing shed that you build, design optimization that you get. So all of this is very important, and that's what has really helped us to foray into this sector from the time we have announced it. So GreenBase Industrial Logistics Park is at Talegaon. We're a pan-India player. We have 270 acres sitting out at Talegaon. We have got around 75 odd acres out of Nasik. We have got substantial about 150 odd acres in Oragadam, Chennai, which is a hotspot for industrial and warehousing and logistics sector. And then we have something in 25 acres in Durgapur. These are the current sites which are going on with development and leasing. And at the same time, we are looking at expanding our footprint into near MMR region at Bhiwandi and Bangalore and NCR in Delhi. So that's about, so our business plan was about 10 million square feet in the next 5 years. So when we started, so we are close to achieved close to about 1 million square feet as of today in the last 2 years.
Warehousing sector witnessed constant growth, but since the moment COVID hit, this sector, like all other sectors, also felt slowed down initially. So that times customers were not sure whether to lease or not to lease a space because everything was so uncertain at that time. Do you see any changes in that thought process right now?
See, this pandemic has been once in for 100 years. So whether it impacted my sector of industrial logistics and warehousing or it impacted all the sectors, I would say it impacted most of the sectors. Essentially because demand was down, supply was there, but whatever supply was there was either half finished or etc. So, currently you are sitting on the inventory of 110 million square feet of warehousing and logistics space across. And then you're talking about adding new. So while people have not have put their capex on hold in terms of, new factory to build or new supply chain hub to build, etc. But they are slowly coming out because this is the right time for them to rethink and be able to build. The only change I feel is while the demand remains same because of the digital transformation, click and buy and click.
Yes.
Click and move. So that has really given an impetus to the warehousing solutions that you need to really give in this business. So that has added to the additional demand, the e-commerce and the digital transformational demand that has come in. And not only from now urban markets, it's also now very common in the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 markets. And multi language. So you can even buy in Hindi, in Marathi, in Gujarati. So there are options in the internet. So obviously the link to the brick and mortar of warehousing and final goods reaching is also has impacted in terms of corona, but it has also given rise to new innovative ways of warehousing demands that has come up.
Absolutely.
So people have moved away from a single point fulfilling center to a hub and spoke and more closer to the city. So suppose they had decided they would have 3 lakh square feet. Now that's moved to a 5 lakh little away from the city, but they have taken smaller warehouses close to the city, the fulfillment centers. So I think that's what has happened. Number one, I think the demand for industrial warehousing and especially the infrastructure space like data centers have gone up tremendously, and we are into all of this space. So as the Hiranandani Group, and since I feel it's a good time. Next 5 to 7 years, you will see huge models, grade A kind of good warehousing and logistics space coming up. A very good build to suit industrial space coming up. Yes, there will be little uncertainty in terms of the demand patterns and corporates thinking about how much and when to invest, given that they all got stuck with Corona. If your
Yeah.
ultimate product was automobiles was anyway in a downward trend even before Corona. Now I think it's time for it to move up because people
Right.
think about trading in and buying new automobiles. Ultimately, it's tied to the ultimate product that you really buy in the consumer market. So I think progressively, I think in the next 2-3 quarters you will see substantial demand. If you see all the real estate asset classes, industrial logistics and warehousing was the least impacted by this pandemic. So people still needed essential commodities to be supplied. People needed still Amazon to deliver. It was
Right.
either a FMCG or non-FMCG product. So you have to store it somewhere. You have to ship it somewhere. So the least impacted was among the real estate classes was this sector, and now it can only grow from here. That's what I see.
Okay, so absolutely, as you've mentioned earlier about Amazon, or you've mentioned about earlier the e-commerce. So during this time, we noticed that demand for warehousing and logistics was dominated by e-commerce brands. Do you think that going forward, this trend would improve?
See, the government imposed lockdown and COVID-19 as sort of changed the people's buying habits. So now it's more like what I said was click and buy, and that's moved towards digital transformation, and people have been buying habits have changed. And to keep pace with that from the corporate side, the warehousing ability closer to the city, delivery time and schedules, they have also changed. So as I see during COVID, things are post COVID, I would see that these habits would have a direct impact in terms of the demand factor for warehousing space. It would determine the location, the cost, the time to reach the ultimate product to the ultimate consumer. So I think all these factors considered, I think the shift is as even currently, as you see, e-commerce contributes close to 60% of their of the demand in the warehousing space by from the e-commerce centers for e-fulfillment. So I think that can only be between 60 to 70. But what I interestingly also see is a lot of factories on industrial build to suit are also moving towards the um, uh, closer to market or low cost to market kind of models. So they will also be investing and building their factories closer to the consumption centers, so
Absolutely.
that they're not to carry inventory out there. So that's also playing out as a nice demand pattern in this sector, as I see.
How Hiranandani developers is adapting technology like Internet of Things, artificial intelligence to create modernization and optimization of warehousing operations.
See, the GreenBase tech industrial and warehousing parts of Hiranandani has been developed as has been set up to develop best in class a grade A warehousing space across pan India, as I see today in my entire portfolio. That was one of my objectives. So we actually use a lot of technology like IoT, AI, apart from the material handling systems that you use to make it much more the sensor based, certain algorithms to say how your lighting should be. So we have been using technology, and we have been at forefront because we have been, while we are traditionally a high brand developers, we have also ensured that technology plays a part in improving the design and optimizing the entire space for the customer finally. So we are moving away from a concept of only looking at a return and saying that customer delight would be important. Number one. Number two, now safety and hygiene standards have also ensured that you would have more safety at the entrance, at the entrance of the warehouse, at the gate. You lose biometric, but biometric also is some. So you'll have a digital walk-in, face recognition, and those kind of stuff. So we have already done. We've engaged consultants to support us in this, and even in supply chain logistics, we are using decent amount of technology, the algorithms to be able to ensure that so that it goes as a value add to the customer when he's deciding on the warehouse space that we have to do as a build and suit. So that is something which we'll do. We design also warehouse keeping in mind which will support machine learning and AI.
Yeah, yeah.
For example, customer when he gives his specs, he says, "Oh, I'm going to be using robots for handling material handling or something. So then he creates a separate. So from our side as a developer, we can create innovative space solutions to accommodate machine learning and AI for to be used in the warehouse for them, as you would see, or the racking system that could be automatic and and workflow based. So we also have set up a separate vertical called YOTA, where we have started developing data centers,
Yeah,
and
Utah
which is like
infrastructure. Yes.
YOTA infrastructure. So that's developing data centers. Now that is set up in Chennai, which is next door to my industrial corridor. So obviously, a lot of people who come to my industrial and warehousing segment could be industrial factories. Right now, I'm building a large turbine, like a wind turbine factory for Vestas. So I've more or less done 1 million square feet in my in the Chennai business. So, and I've done close to around half a million in my Talegaon business. So that's so what we see is this in Talegaon we may provide a unique power solutions like solar on top of the warehouse, so
Yes.
renewable energy. So that also has new systems which can monitor and see how much light you require and stuff like that. So we enable, and our warehouses are designed to adapt to AI and machine learning. So that is one of the biggest contribution. Directly, how much more technology can I bring in like IoT or AI? That depends on the actual user. So I can facilitate and make him use all of those and see what his requirements are vis-a-vis for use of that, and bring that into my design and scope of building the warehouse or the industry that I do for it.
Absolutely. So earlier, like how you've mentioned that you have seen shift towards A-grade warehousing and tier two
Mm.
and tier three cities emerge as preferred destinations for warehousing industry. So apart from these, can you list some of the new trends which you have noticed in warehousing and logistics sector?
New warehousing trends, right? I think now we can see people going for multi-storied vertical warehousing, in-city warehousing as it is called, because
Yes.
people prefer. See, fundamentally, historically, what's been happening? Industrial and logistics and warehousing are only single-storied buildings, right? You can't build multi-storied buildings because you're going to use forklifts, you're going to use a 12-meter height for a warehouse shed. So all these are very very competitive, and the cost of building this multi-story would be expensive, especially in city. So then
Right.
your rentals will be substantially higher. So that's what I was saying, that different logistic players, 3PL players have now moved to smaller version of warehousing space within the city, and they don't mind the vertical warehousing, and they're ready to pay that cost. So I think I've seen a multi-level storage warehousing as a new concept that is got introduced, in city warehousing closer to the city at different levels. So maybe you will see more of that coming up, because that would be the need of the hour. And maybe the pandemic has also taught in terms of speed of deliveries and stuff. So especially FMCG, consumer durable and non-durable and essentials will look at realigning their hub and spokes, more spokes closer to the same city warehousing kind of a model. That's one. I've seen a little bit change in terms of, as you rightly said, AI and ML making real-time decisions in terms of supply chain logistics. Thereby, either they have shrunk their inventory carrying space, or they have expanded their inventory carrying space vis-a-vis locations.
Right.
So it's actually the lead time of delivery and inventory storage. So that is
Absolutely.
the second change. And third, I'm seeing is that people are now very conscious of the fact that you see, olden days, not olden days, even a few years back, we all used to talk about negative working capital, just in time, vendor managed inventory. These concepts are very good in terms of managing a working capital and still work well for supply chain. But I think COVID-19 as a pandemic has taught us now that the supply is essential. So
Yes.
people have lost businesses because they had inventory in the factory, but they couldn't reach it to the warehouse, or they couldn't reach it from warehouse to the customer's hub or spoke. So I think now, close to market, close to delivery timelines, and adequate storage. These will be the new rules, which will be algorithms which will drive the supply chain business as you go. But both globally, I'm saying, and I think that's something which I see. And the last fourth one is I see the people have, buying habits have also changed. I mean, today, even earlier it was available, but people were still prefer to go out and buy even
Retail
those items
outlets.
which were touch and feel things. Now, even you might have gone and picked up your garment on Amazon or on Mintra or something like that. So now that requires a different set of supply chain. Now you have to even offer value-added services to the digital model, and then that would entail a different kind of warehousing and inventory management system for companies. and that would lead to a little bit of change in the design specs technology that they'll use in warehouse, because they will add those uh, experiences on digital model and then try to incorporate those to be made available in the warehouse, which means, for example, different designs. Now people might pick and choose in the digital model and have different designs, and there has to be capacity to fulfill the demand in the warehouse or their fulfillment center, I would call. I may not even call it as a warehouse, because they may have a little bit of work to be done. It's like saying that you create a biryani rice and keep it common. Somebody wants non-veg, put few chicken pieces, put the biryani, send it. Somebody wants veg, put some boiled vegetables, put the biryani and send it. The gravy is a little
Right.
different. Then to store all of that, you require a different pattern, and to process them, you require a different pattern at the warehouse or the fulfillment center. So I think, so I'm just trying to give that as an example to make it easy, but that's the kind of technology. For example, some components, so they will now start keeping a little bit of incremental components in the warehouse for automotive products, which would mean there is a little difference in design. So this is the fourth, and this is essentially because of the need and people's habit big changing. And I think it's going to stay even post Corona. People will find it much more easier to order from home, especially both, not only the essential commodities, even the non-consumer, non-durable kind of items. I have seen people ordering chimneys, gases, gas hobs, everything, and I was surprised. And I said, and clothes. So then, why would you step out to get a retail experience? Essentially, only for the experience.
Right.
It's like in the US, you have the malls. If you step, they're all empty. People walk into the malls only to buy. So the conversion rate in the US is 100%. Whereas in India, conversion rate used to be 15-20%, because most of the guys used to head for the food mall or the multiplex and then walk out. But then I think those things are all, we have to wait and watch how this change.
Going forward, do you think that real estate developers will look into diversification and new opportunities of investment, especially in the logistics sector?
I think yes. As I told you, during this pandemic, even before the pandemic, we are close to more than 117 million square feet of demand, and still square feet of available space, and people are looking at it. I think this was one sector which was the most least impacted during the pandemic. I still continue to work, except for the month of April. I had worked on my sites. We had few COVID cases. They got treated. They came back, and life was normal. We are working because, and we ensure that we took care of our labor, because we have large camps where we stock labor. We gave them. So the idea I think is that this sector is here set to grow, but it's going to be much more competitive as things go up, because there will be so many players who have jumped into the bandwagon and said that we will look at warehousing industrial as a sunrise sector. I mean, people, all real estate developers who are developing residential and think they have got into industrial, has started. So the whole idea is that I think this sector is going to grow, because your consumption and demand patterns, obviously, in the medium to long term, I look at an upward trend post Corona, maybe this pandemic blowing away. Number two, I think these are all low hanging fruits, because there is going to be a demand. Incidentally, India, still ranks as a percentage of GDP, 13% is the GDP cost as of logistics and supply chain. Whereas we have to come down to some less than 10 percentage kind of numbers, between 8 to 10. So which means there is so much of work that we need to do on infrastructure, industrial logistics, that all these consumption centers come together, efficiency of moving goods, efficiency of storage, which means logistics, which means warehousing. So we are at the part of, where we do build to suit industrial centers, build to suit warehousing. So we feel that portion of the real estate as an asset class is bound to grow. But yes, we have to, given the nature of the beast, we have to optimize cost and design and still deliver grade A kind of warehouse. People have
Yeah.
moved away from the concept of godowns, small warehouses. So now you won't see, you'll see those fading away, and I'm seeing that they would fade away faster post this pandemic. And so that's why that's a good sector to be in from a real estate, as a real estate player. But you can't expect uh, a great I mean, you can expect a natural, normal, healthy return and a capital gain on the yield, on the cap rate that you would able to accumulate the portfolio at going forward.
Okay. Okay. So, as a developer, if you have to suggest some policy reforms today, what would that be for warehousing?
See, biggest thing for the industrial and warehousing is that you're not getting the GST input credit, which is actually getting added to your cost for 18% or whatever, 12 to 18%.
Yes.
Because anything that you lease, you don't have input credit. We already made representations to the government, and that's one of the biggest policy initiative. I made representations through APRIA and through NEREDCO. So we look at GST credit coming to this because fundamentally these are long-term nature of assets. They are not meant for sale. They are built and then leased out. So why not I get the input credit on which I have paid already tax on the inputs like steel, cement, aluminium, PEBs, everything. So that is something which is maybe let them provide by saying that input credit, okay, you don't get the full 18%, you will get 15%, you will get 14%, or you will get 50% of the input credit. Sorry, but something has to be done that because the cost, this is a very, very cost competitive market. So you're actually require this kind of a policy measure to really help you. That's one. Second is I think government cost of land acquisition of land is very critical.
Yeah.
Location and access, and biggest owner of land is the government, so they probably can help us to create by putting in more clusters closer to the cities, on the outskirts of the cities but closer to the cities, so that people can and have some a reasonable benchmarking on land pricing for industrial warehousing platforms, so that we can go out and buy those pieces of land tailor made. And the third could be if they can manage for this sector at least a single window clearance, so that because these are all gestation period is too low. If somebody wants a warehouse of 1 million, you still can deliver in 9 months,
Yes. Yes.
even a half a million in 9 months. Unlike building a construction, a building of 16 floors will take 4 years. So we need to evolve a single window clearance policy for everything, so that people can go and create quickly make this happen. So these are the four things that I thought to top of my mind were. And I think the government is continuing to work. They have done a lot of work on the NHAI and the highways. So they also talked about industrial clusters in both
Yeah.
Delhi side and in Bombay side. I think that's a welcome thing, and I'm very appreciative of that fact.
Yes. So I just have one last question for you. So what's your take on government initiatives like Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India, and more impetus on manufacturing to be pushed in India? What are the current challenges you see to make an alternative to a country like China?
See, we have to accept the fact that pure warehousing play will become very competitive. So obviously, like we as Hiranandani GreenBase, I look at a balancing portfolio of 50 to 60% of industrial built to suit and another 50% of warehousing, because that's the way I look at it. And I think that's a very good mix. Number one. Number two, in Atmanirbhar Bharat, it's all about Make in India. This initiative was actually taken up by our honorable Prime Minister some time back, and I think it's working out. And I think it's an important initiative. And I can see a lot of people now in the Asian context, ASEAN context, looking at India as the manufacturing hub. So what does India has the domain expertise knowledge. You have the maximum amount of engineers in this country, maximum amount of technology experts in this country. We actually go out and deliver it to some other place. So if you're able to build that index out here, India has got a fantastic chance for the next 3 to 4 years to become the largest manufacturing hub for the world. And that's how you will get the entire FDI coming into India. A lot of people coming and setting shops in India. Over and above that, Indians also setting up shops in India, Make in India. And then right now what is happening is somebody makes some parts in, outsource the entire thing to China. China gives a small component for India to make, and then you ship it out back to China. So the value added that goes out of India is less. I see
Yes.
value added products coming out of India to be going up on the increasing scale. Number one. Number two, I think India has got a fantastic bunch of engineers in terms of population, technology guys, IT guys, design, etc. So it's only about putting these together and Make in India concept working. Make in India will also increase your GDP, as I see, in terms of products and services that you would generate out of India and give it out. So on an overall basis, given the Make in India movement, your National Highway Bharatmala project connecting, villages, Orissa to Bombay, and it's fantastic. They are building 30, 32 kilometers a day. So I think infrastructure is going to improve substantially to ease out the interstate trade and movement, etc. So I see that Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat is a very important step towards ensuring that your fiscal deficit, your GDP growth, everything is managed. Number one. Number two, it increases the perspective for people to have the unemployment rates will come down. So that's number one. Number two, number three is that people study engineering, but then all of them don't go into Infosys. So you need to have people getting into manufacturing industry, engineers doing a lot of. So since we became more focused on services, we lost our edge in terms of the engineering scalability that we had and potential. So I think Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat refocuses us back in terms of getting us back to where we are. And economically, it makes great sense because it's going to add to your GDP in terms of products and services that you make in India and sell to Indians and then sell to outsiders also. So that's how I look at this whole thing, and I feel good about it. And I feel that for example, I met an entrepreneur who was doing foam work. He used to import earlier. The foam work was essentially for buildings and panels. Now he used to buy Korean makes, etc. Now he's making it in India and he's supplying it at a price cheaper than the what you would have imported it. So this is a great example of Make in India. So so that is one. All AI and ML and everything else that we can develop within India, and getting and sort of implement it across supply chain technologies, warehousing, material movement technologies. Great. We actually go out and make it for American companies outside. We can make
Yes.
it work it out for ourselves. So I don't see a dearth of talent, a dearth of will. I think it's only the capital which we used to depend on for that. So the capital, I think a lot of foreign companies are also willing to invest in India to make in India for themselves and export. So that serves both the purpose of making in India and also having global marketplace as your market.
Okay, so thank you very much. It was a wonderful, insightful session. And with this, out of this whole conversation, we understand that warehousing sector is here to grow, and it will become eventually, it will become very competitive with the time. So thank you, Mr. Narayan, for your time. For viewers of Reality Next, we will come back with many more latest trends and updates. So till then, for more updates, do follow Reality NXT. Thank you very much.